Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by Condor, Jones, top, other point fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, in double,
left point, long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schichter by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello from Hershey, Pennsylvania.
And Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, number 143 for Saturday, June 24th, 2023. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring tips for preventing heat stroke in livestock, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, well, welcome to the end of the season. Congratulations, you finally made it here. But we're going to touch on some small things before we recap the Calder Cup Finals. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes caring about a submersible piloted by a knockoff PlayStation controller. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? All right, Sarah, it's early in the podcast, but I already lied. We don't have anything else to talk about. It's straight, just like we've covered, Mitch Love got hired by the Capitals. So that's a bingo square for me, as we are now going to have
that's right. 7
brand new coaches next season in the AHL, which I'll be honest, I didn't think was a number I was going to get to, but,
surprise!
people get hired, people get fired. So what I think is interesting is that gives Washington a very young head coach, a very young assistant coach. Scott Allen is still there, despite the fact that I thought I saw him getting fired earlier. But he's like the elder statesman in the room, and I think that's you need someone in there who's maybe a little bit more old school, rides a Harley around, that kind of thing.
Totally normal.
Scott Allen on a Harley is something I need to see before I believe it. I don't know. I've never met the man, but he just does not strike me as like an easy rider, background kind of guy. But anyway, I think that's it. That's really happened around the league was the Mitch Love news. So what do you say? Let's get into it, Sarah.
Let's do it.
Calder Cup Finals, Hershey Bears, Coachella Valley Firebirds. Let's talk about what happened. Game 1, Coachella Valley did as it had in all the previous playoff series. It came out in Game 1 and dominated. Ty Cartier opened the scoring off power play, off a Henrik Borgstrom hooking call, took a kick-out pass from Cole Lind, who waited to draw Garrett Pilon in, which gave Cartier time and space to fire from home plate. That put up the Firebirds 1-0. Billy Petman put them up 2-0 off a Bears line change 4v4 that saw them kind of over-pursue. Cole Lind once again found Petman as the trailer, and he wristed one past Shepard. Then Poldarowski, Frodian, and Alexander True tacked on the beatdown in the third for a 5-0 win for the Firebirds in Game 1. Beginning to end, a pretty dominant effort from them. Game 2 saw Hershey come out looking a lot more prepared and alive than in Game 1. However, they were still struggling to generate quality scoring chances and were instead settling for perimeter shots that had little hope of becoming a goal. And then the officiating standard we saw all playoffs of unless the DA is considering pressing charges, it's not a penalty. Just get hit with the classic Uno reverse card, and called the actual rule book was the new standard. And as Hershey was the more physical team, the penalties went largely against them. Penalties that, in fairness to those officials, they did, but just that wasn't the standard in which they were used to being called. Coachella Valley scored 4 goals in the second period, 2 on the power play, 6 power plays total in the second period alone. And that was enough to throw any momentum the Bears even ever thought of, just completely out the window as they failed to adjust their play to this standard of officiating. Game 3, that standard of officiating was supposed to continue throughout the rest of the series, according to Todd Nelson. Spoiler alert, it did not. A shocking twist that absolutely none of us saw coming. What did change for Game 3 is the Bears' power play went from slow, static, and predictable to dynamic, dangerous, and on the board. Ethan Frank opened up the scoring in the series for the Bears off a Royal Road pass on the power play from the only Bear who seemed capable of making such a pass, Sam Annis. What also changed for the Bears is their top 6 contributions. Ethan Frank scored that power play goal, followed by a 2-on-1 goal from Joe Snively as he and Garrett Pilon got a jump out of the D zone. Connor McMichael found them to give the Bears a 2-1 lead just 1 minute and 5 seconds into the second period. Shane Wright made a beautiful Royal Road pass on the rush to Carson Twarynski to bring the Firebirds within 1, but Pilon answered back just 48 seconds later with a great solo drive into the slot after scooping up a loose puck, courtesy of a Logan Day poke check at the blue line. That made it 4-2 again. But the Firebirds never to be counted out. Cam Hughes banged home a rebound on the power play, and you can just feel the anxiety in the Giant Center as 10,000 Bears fans just felt overtime coming despite a 1-goal lead and 4.5 minutes left in the third. That anxiety became justified as Cam Hughes scored another net front goal with 51 seconds left and an empty net on his end in regulation to tie the game. And in an overtime that featured a great what-if moment in Calder Cup history, 9:26 into overtime, Riker Evans hits the post off a shot from a Royal Road pass that had Shepard beat cleanly with room to spare on the net, and it hits the post. 4 minutes later, Riley Sutter takes a backhand swat at a rebound from a Mason Morelli shot that finds the back of the net, and just like that, we have a series again. The Bears have life, a 2-1 series deficit instead of a 3-0 series deficit, should that shot from Riker Evans go in. And that forever changed everything. Game 4 saw Hershey play its best game of the series to that point. They uglied up the game with solid forechecking, good poise in the defensive zone, a effective play in the neutral zone. They slowed the game to a crawl. Hershey's power play got it going again as Mike Vecchione took a loose puck at the net front and chipped it top shelf for an early lead in the first. Coachella struck back on another beautiful Royal Road pass on the rush from Shane Wright, this time finding Austin Pagansky to even up the score at 1. Hershey's top 6 then once again sprung into action as Mike Vecchione and Ethan Frank found the back of the net in the second period to give the Bears a 2-goal lead. But just like Game 3, the Firebirds came back. Jesper Frodin caught the Bears being more interested in guarding passing options for Frodin from behind the net than actually guarding Frodin. He just kind of glided around the net and put one past a sprawling and helpless Hunter Shepard in a goal that I've scored in NHL 04 like 100 times to make it a 1-goal game. However, the vibes in Giant Center this time were different. They didn't have that same tension as time counted down before. The belief was back in the Bears Nation. And after that Game 3, and the Giant Center was loud and rocking in those last few minutes in Game 4, and you could feel the energy just building in that crowd. That inevitable feeling that the Firebirds were going to score didn't feel so inevitable. It felt like Hershey was going to hold on, and they did. A 3-2 win to take the series, to tie the series at 2 games apiece. Game 5, we said in the series preview that Hershey needed to ugly up the game, and Game 5 was by far the ugliest. It was a game where only once did a team see double-digit shots on goal during a period. A game where the Bears forechecked, battled, and managed to keep Coachella Valley largely under wraps for 72 minutes of game time. Garrett Pilon fired a shot from the point just as Mason Morelli eclipsed Joey Decord's eyes with the screen in front, and that was enough. DeCord's X-ray vision failed him, and he wasn't able to track Pilon's glove side high shot. Hershey wins Game 5 1-0 in overtime to take the home sweep it so desperately needed, and was one win away from a 12th Calder Cup. Game 6, as tense as the Giant Center was in Game 3 and early in Game 4, Acrisure Arena always felt loose and loud, even with the Firebirds coming home behind the 8-ball in the series. Not even when Connor McMichael stripped Gustav Olofsson in the Firebird zone and finished the play with a goal for a 1-0 Bears lead, the Acrisure Arena crowd's faith was rewarded as the Firebirds scored 3 goals in under 7 minutes to take a 3-1 lead into the first intermission. And Coachella Valley just dominated the game from there, as Hershey had 10 shots in the first period, but just 12 the rest of the game, despite being behind. You usually see the team losing have game score effects, basically, in their shots total, where one side's like, we already have the lead. We don't need to create more offense. Let's just, chip it 200 feet and make them come play to us. Coachella Valley wins Game 6 to set up a finale to the 22-23 season that was storybook. They had outscored Hershey 14-2 in California to that point and had that swagger they were missing from the 3 games in Pennsylvania. And then came Game 7. Game 7 saw nearly everything happen. Hershey looked as unprepared as AHL TV for Game 7 in the first period, as Coachella Valley got out to an early lead as Dylan McElrath was stripped from behind by Andrew Podorowski in the Bear zone. Potts swung around the net and found an activating Riker Evans in the home plate area as he blasted one past Shepard for a 1-0 lead early. Things didn't get much better to start the second, as every Bears player lost track of Max McCormick on a rush chance, and Cole Lind, master of finding wide open guys in this playoffs, finds him easily isolated by 15 feet in every direction in the slot. He makes it 2-0 Firebirds. The Bears looked lethargic, error-prone, and ready to be put over the ropes. If Hershey was going to win the Calder Cup, it needed a wake-up call. In the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, this would be a good time for a Dylan McElrath fight. A thing that, if you know the way that I view hockey, I never suggest. I think staged fights are mostly stupid and serve no purpose. But Hershey needed something in the middle of that second period to get any kind of momentum going. And then they got one in the form of a Max McCormick tripping penalty. Connor McMichael timed an entry into the back door at the perfect time, as none of the Firebirds penalty killers noticed he was there until it was too late. Mason Morelli chips a pass across the slot to McMichael, and he buries it to make a 1-goal lead to make it a 1-goal game. And out of nowhere, the Bears suddenly went from looking like a Tom Brady football to looking like Violet Beauregard at Willy Wonka's factory tour. The Bears, full of energy, played their most dominant stretch in the series. They weren't just succeeding at uglying up the game. They were taking it to the Firebirds in the last period and a half of regulation with a level of aggression and execution that you just did not see from Hershey prior to the series. Alexi Protas knocked a clearing attempt out of the air from Joey DeCord, regained possession, eventually finds Vincent Iorio at the point for a shot that was going wide, except for a Hendricks Lapierre miracle tip. Joey DeCord experiencing the Hendricks Lapierre experience there, and we have a tied Game 7. Just unbelievable. Third period was all Hershey. They dominated play where if it weren't for big saves by DeCord, this game doesn't even make it to overtime. One thing that didn't even make it to the third period of this game was the officiating standard from game number 2, as this one descended into prison rules for a solid stretch of the third period and a good bit of overtime, except for like a random tripping call that Max McCormick drew, which, yeah, an obvious tripping, but still one where you're like, I mean, okay, now? Like, I've watched dudes mug other dudes on this ice and it was fine, but alas, it came down to overtime. The AHL season came down to a single goal for the entire season. Coachella Valley regrouped during the intermission, came out strong in overtime. They owned the first half the period of overtime, but they were unable to generate really more than one grade A chance, with Andrew Podorowski undressing Logan Day on a deke and then trying to go between the legs for the game winner, which would have been as wild a highlight you will ever see in a Game 7 overtime series championship clinching goal. But he couldn't quite put the shot through, And the end of the professional hockey season came as Henrik Borgstrom spun off Ville Petman along the boards in the Firebird zone, dished to Vecchione at the net front, but the pass was blocked, and a wild scramble ensued at the net front for the loose puck. Borgstrom got it, controlled it, and dished a Royal Road pass to Vecchione, who had kind of circled around the mass of humanity at the net front for a wide open shot, buries the shot past Joey Decord. The Bears have their 12th Calder Cup championship, 3-2 in Game 7 overtime. It does not get any closer, wilder, or more entertaining than that. That being said, Sarah, that's what happened. We had some thoughts about what was going to happen. What did we get wrong, Sarah?
Well, I mean, first off, we got the winner wrong, but that's, that happens. What did we miss in this one? So we said the Coachella Valley needed to get its power play together, need to get the act together on that, and that could help power them to a Calder Cup. Well, in the conference finals against Milwaukee, they went 2 for 22. That's bad. In the Calder Cup Finals, they went 7 for 27. That is a massive improvement for Coachella Valley, and Bears fans basically were holding their breath every time Hershey went on the penalty kill. So Coachella Valley checked that box. They got the power play back together, but they didn't win the series. So that is technically an L for us. Yeah. Our X factor in this series was adjustments. And while both sides made small adjustments as the series wore on, and games in California looked very different than the games in Hershey, it seemed to be more execution driven than adjustment driven. It's possible we're missing adjustments here. Obviously, we're not in the room. We're not on the bench. We don't know what they're saying, but we'd rather be wrong taking the L than be wrong taking the W. So we're going to say we had an L there as well. Really, though, the biggest X factor of that series ended up being power plays. There were so many shifts in momentums in that series that came off the power play opportunities or power play goals. For example, Coachella Valley in game number 2 getting power play calls that Rochester Americans fans should be pretty furious about. There was a Cameron Hughes power play goal in game 3 that shifted momentum big time so the Coachella Valley could even get to overtime. Mike Vecchione's power play goal in game number 4, that got Hershey on the board early and set the tone for that game. And then, of course, Max McCormick's power play goal in game 6, that tied the game and swung momentum to the Firebirds en route to a blowout afterwards. And Connor McMichael's goal in game number 7, where it gave the Hershey Bears life. So real X factor in this series was some fun momentum swings based off of power plays. But it wasn't all bad for us. We did get some things right. One of the keys to the series for Coachella Valley was not letting Hershey take early leads, as Hershey was excellent at locking down leads in both the regular season and the playoffs. The Bears are a great defensive team. They know how to win 1-goal, 2-1, 3-2 style games. In games 2 and 3, Hershey scored first, took early leads in both games in the second period, and those games proved to be crucial for this series. Also, Coachella Valley 100% let Hershey up off the mat. They had a 2-0 series lead, and then Hershey came back and got in the series. They had a 2-0 lead in game 7. I actually was ready to turn the game off at that point because I was like, oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, Hershey. But then, of course, I remembered all the things we've talked about on this show about Coachella Valley just not quite sealing the deal all the time. 2-0 lead in game number 7. And obviously, we all know how that ended. So they did not do that, the crucial thing of actually keeping Hershey down. Hershey's top 6 in the series did get off the milk carton. Vecchione scored the cup winner. Frank had 4 points in the finals, including a game winner. Snively had 5 points in the finals. Borgstrom had 2 points in the finals, including that primary assist on the series winning goal. And then Pilon had 3 points in the finals, including a game winner as well. Also, Hunter Shepard stole the show repeatedly. He won a 1-0 shutout. You don't get tighter than that. He stopped 42 of 47 in game number 7, won the playoffs MVP. And while he didn't always play lights out, he very much made the saves that Hershey needed when they needed them in games 3, 4, 5, and 7. And Hershey uglied it up. Games 3, 4, and 5 were not fast-paced, north-south boat races. They were dump and chase, grind through the neutral zone types of games. Every puck was a battle. Hershey's forecheck led the way in the games that they won, and ultimately they were finishing hits. They wore Coachella Valley down. We said that Hershey had to execute 4 games where they made little to no mistakes, and that is almost exactly what happened. They played an ugly game, and they got the job done. That's what we looked at. Those were our predictions, right or wrong, however you like it. Let's just have some final thoughts. What are your thoughts on this series that we saw, that we experienced, that you got to go see in person?
I will say I'm like we all three of us, the model, you and I mean, the model doesn't make picks, it just has favorites. It weighs probability. We pick. So we are wrong. The model is not. The model overall went 12-10 picking series in these Calder Cup playoffs. And considering that most teams were favored by a number in the 50s, it's not going to do better than 12-10. That's how, when you're taking 50, 53, 55, 58% chances at winning a series, if it had picked, some ridiculous number, that would, to me, argue that the model was being more inaccurate, that it was under favoring favored teams. Upsets happen. I think going into this series, our analysis was good. We called, if Hershey was going to win, this is what it had to look like. If Coachella Valley was going to win, this had to look like. And the games each side won, that's what they did. The fact that I think we picked Coachella Valley doesn't, we obviously didn't think that Hershey would pull off this upset, but upsets happen. That's what happens in sports. And I don't think that cheapens anything here. No one chases Mike Eruzione around and whispers, yeah, but you weren't the best team in that Olympics. After Florida beat Boston, no one was coming up to, Matthew Tkachuk or the rest of the Panthers and being like, yeah, but you didn't deserve to win that series. The Bruins were better. That's no serious person was trying to troll the experts that picked Boston to win that series. Everyone knew why Boston was the favorite in that series. And I understand not everyone on the East Coast could name 3 Coachella Valley Firebirds before this series started. I'd seen every one of their playoff games, and probably 10 or 15 in the regular season. I felt confident that team was very good. And being at Game 4 and talking to a bunch of Bears fans, they knew it too after the first 2 games. They acknowledged this was a real good team. They still had the faith that that Hershey could pull it out, but they knew that this was not a team to be trifled with. That they belonged here and were probably the more talented team. But talent doesn't always win. That's why they play the games. Hershey was the underdog in this series, and it showed in games 1, 2, and 6. In the rest of them, in some form or another, Hershey managed to drag Coachella Valley to the depths and beat them the only way that we could. And I think our analysis of the series largely reflected that. Hell, I think we might have even said those exact words. But at the same point too, upsets happen. I think that it's fine that we all thought Coachella Valley was a big favorite, and they looked like a big favorite at times, and then couldn't, ultimately finish it off. This is when series are won by a team that is the underdog, they look exactly like this. They got outscored badly in the games they lost, and they won 4 games, 3 of them in overtime, the other one by a game that very easily could have gone to overtime. That's what happens when scrappy, hungry underdogs beat bigger, better, faster teams. And that doesn't cheapen anything. Hershey is still the Calder Cup champions. They still deserved it. There ain't nothing that's going to change that. But this was an incredibly well fought series. I think that we did a good job covering it. As for Coachella Valley, fans, if you manage to, want to hear about how the series went on after what you experienced, good for you. You should leave this series with your heads held high. You were literally 1 goal, 1 good bounce in your favor away from a fantasy season, a fantasy first season, a literal best case for the franchise. And it always drives me nuts to hear anytime someone says that every sports season has 1 winner and everyone else's seasons was a failure. So many teams in the AHL had seasons that were massive successes. Hershey, obviously, but also Hartford, Abbotsford, Texas, Colorado, Rockford, Milwaukee, Rochester. Coachella Valley belongs on that list. I don't know how you look at their seasons and say those were failures. I've really enjoyed engaging with the Coachella Valley fan base too this year. And for the record, no, I do not say that about every fan base. There are at least 2 that, by and large, I have not enjoyed my time with. I've loved the atmosphere that I've seen at the Acrisure Arena. I love the game day signs. I love the energy the crowd brings the entire game. I'm not a jealous person by nature, but I am incredibly jealous that Sarah, you got to go experience a game there and meet people and take in the whole thing, and I have not. If I'm ever in California during hockey season, you can 100% count me in for a game there. If anyone wants to give Coachella Valley fans grief over being rookie fans or not deserving something, you can please send them to me, and I will have words for them that can't be shared on our family-friendly podcast, but do have gestures associated with them. I will let you use your imagination. I also want to point out I do not yet have a Coachella Valley Firebirds jersey in my collection, mostly because you guys bought them all. I mean all. When they come back in stock, I will be getting one. It will be on this podcast. I don't know when that's going to be, though. So that is on the list for the off season. But yeah, great series. I'm very glad I got to go to Game 4. I'm sad that I couldn't go to any of the other games in Hershey, but my schedule did not allow that. Coachella Valley, please leave with your head held high. You had a great season. It sucks the way it ended at the end, but to be honest, it's always the end always hurts unless you win, but that doesn't mean you didn't enjoy the ride there. And what you built this year is absolutely special, and you should hang your hat on that. Sarah, your thoughts?
So for me, I mean, my biggest takeaway really has been that this series was even better than I thought it was going to be. This is a series that at the time it went back to Hershey, I was like, is it even, I don't know that it's going to even get to come back to Palm Springs. You know, I knew it was going to be a good series. I didn't know that we were going to get 7 games of largely very tight hockey between these two teams. Hershey survived a lot to get this far. They had to go through a lot of nonsense to get out of the Eastern Conference. I will admit to having counted them out at times, and every time they rose to the challenge in each team that they faced. Meanwhile, Coachella Valley took the league by storm at the beginning of the season, had to play for ages on the road because their home arena wasn't even ready yet, dealing with all the issues that come with being a new franchise in general. How are people going to react to us? What's the fans going to be like? This team has played well from day one and had a well-deserved cup run. After games 1 and 2, like I said, I was skeptical that Hershey was even going to be able to find themselves. They didn't look even close to having an answer to Coachella Valley in those first 2 games. And I didn't know that being home was going to make that much of a difference, but it did for them. And really from start to finish, this was an exciting series. You had physicality, you had sold out crowds, you had lots of overtime, that 1-0 game. I love a good 1-0 game when I don't care who wins. It's just the tension of it is just perfect. I love it. And for the cup to be decided by Game 7 overtime, like having watched some of those types of games for teams that I personally root for, I know how stressful and agonizing that can be as a fan to your entire season comes down to one lucky bounce, one great shot in overtime. I know how horrible that feels, but as an outside observer, as someone with no rooting interest in the game, it is maybe the most fun you could possibly have. I love that kind of chaos. Like maybe it would have been more fun if it wasn't a game in the Pacific time zone, so that, not falling asleep during it, but you can't win them all, I guess. We had great performances from players on both sides. We had the goaltending duel between Joey Decord, Hunter Shepard, breakout performances from guys like Cole Lind, Alexander True, Riker Evans over on Coachella Valley side. Lots of growth from Shane Wright, who people were kind of wondering what he was going to look like jumping in the playoffs. Over on Hershey's side, like we've talked about, Hunter Shepard was a huge surprise for me in how he really stepped up in the regular season and in the playoffs, and he absolutely battled for that team. Like we said, he made the saves when he needed to make them, and that was the difference. Getting to see a veteran player like Mike Vacchione make his first real deep playoff run and score the cup-winning goal, development of guys like Hendrix Lapierre. There's just a lot for both fans of both teams to get really excited about and to be proud of, and a lot of players now who know what it takes to go this deep and to win. On either side, they've now gone this far. And from the fan perspective, this is 2 fan bases who never counted their teams out. Yes, Hershey fans, I see you getting mad about the model anytime we posted the charts online. I see it. I get it. It's just math. Like, we don't hate your team. It's just the math, but I loved seeing Hershey fans being defiant of that, to argue with the predictions right up until the very end. That's something that makes this kind of work and this kind of analysis fun. What happens isn't always going to match up. Like we said, upsets happen. That's the way it works. Where else do you get to say that math is wrong? I haven't been to Hershey yet. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make it out for the games here, but I have been to Coachella Valley. The atmosphere is great. The fans are great. They're passionate about this team. It's not just people who are snowbirds who are wintering down there, including many who I know delayed their plans to go back north just so they could see the playoffs through, to support this team the whole way through. But it's people from all walks of life who have come out to support this team and really grow hockey in the desert and show that it can be successful there. So I loved the narrative of League's oldest team versus League's newest team, and seeing both of those fan bases show up and give their teams something to build on for the future it was fun. It was a hard-fought series. I loved that it came down to Game 7 overtime. That is perfect chaos, just perfect.
I want to add two quick things here because you made me think of them. One, someone said that one of our graphs or something got on the scoreboard as in Hershey as like a pregame hype video thing. I did not get to see that, but someone told me that one of our graphs made it on there, which, if you have video of that or anyone took a single picture of that, please, for the love of God, send it to us.
That's
I want to see that. I'm not mad at all. I think it's hilarious. So yeah, please, if you have a picture of one of our graphs on the Giant Center scoreboard, I did not see that when I was there because I absolutely would have stood up and laughed. But that apparently happened and I missed it. So if you have pictures of that, send it to us. Number two, I was tense in that Game 7 overtime. My tracker that tracks my heart rate activity thought I was doing a small workout during Game 7. And if that doesn't make sense to you, because I'm not a fan of either side, correct. That didn't make sense to me either. But I was making motions and jumping and holding my breath when any team did anything in the overtime. I was as confused an emotional state, but a very stressed one. I don't know. When it was over, I was happy, sad. I don't have words, but I felt uncomfortable in that overtime. All right. That being said, that wraps up all but one outstanding thing in our 2023 season coverage. But let's talk about that. Sarah, what final thoughts do you have on the season as a whole now that we are basically past the point in which games will be played?
Yeah, no, there are no more secret games on the calendar. This was a fun season. So for me, this was also, I've covered the AHL for a long time, but I've always been very focused on Central Pacific Division teams. This was the first real extended exposure I've gotten to basically most of the Eastern Conference teams. And so getting to become familiar with those fan bases, getting to become familiar with the personalities on those teams was really exciting for me on a personal level to just get to dig deeper into this league. I think there were a lot of players who have been underestimated or who people aren't aware of because they don't watch the rest of the league. They don't, pay attention to teams outside of their own. And that's how sports are. But I think it kind of shows the depth of this league and the importance of this league of getting to see players who you may not have otherwise known of before. When we do our previews, I was like, what's a Brandon Bussey? I don't know who you are. And here we are, one of the best goaltenders this season, just came out of nowhere for me. So for me, as someone covering the sport, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know what's happening on the other half of the country a little bit better. It's been fun. I've also really enjoyed. I guess my thoughts on the season are really more about me. But I think if you've watched any of the shows this season, that's normal. It has been a delight for me to be on this show, to get to dig more into the league and to get a little bit more detailed and serious in the analysis that I do. I have particularly enjoyed if you, the listener viewer, is not aware, Sean is very much the analytics, mathematical, systems driven guy. I'm not going to sell myself short. I can do those things, but I'm also kind of just here for the vibes. But to see how it's basically an example of the eye test versus analytics. And it's been really fun for me to see where we match up. And I think gives a lot of validity to the idea that there is no one way necessarily to analyze hockey, and you kind of need both. You need the eye test and you need analytics. And when one of them doesn't live up to what you're expecting, you got to look at the other side to see what happened. And so I've really enjoyed the times where, we both prepare our own notes and everything independently for this show. And then we come together and we both have the same thought on something. And I'm like, oh, look at that. Fancy, huh? But so it's been really interesting to just see how that has played out all this season. Hockey-wise, we've had a lot of really great narratives. Obviously, Coachella Valley coming in has been exciting. I think it's been a big thing for the league to have this new team come in, do very well, take everything by storm. Like, it's kind of the Vegas Golden Knights of the AHL, of brand new team comes in and blows everything up. It's just it's just a lot. It's been a lot of fun this year. As someone covering a team that did not make it to the playoffs, kind of got to see how that side of the world worked, of not having anything due past the end of the season. But I think next year is going to be even more interesting with some more upheaval, some more new coaches. One team going rogue. We'll see how it goes. But I have had a blast this season, from day one to Game 7 overtime, 1:00 in the morning, handshake line. I've loved it.
Absolutely. For me, what a ride. I mean, from preseason predictions to breaking down a Game 7 overtime Calder Cup winner, it's been a whirlwind of emotions the entire way through. Joy, laughter, anger, frustration, exhaustion, more joy, more laughter, and a few mixed in between there as well. Like I said, my emotion during that overtime in Game 7 was check all that apply. And we had a lot of uncertainty going into this season. We changed formats, co-hosts, and more. But we sorted it all out, and we had a lot of fun this season. We made great memes. We made memes that angered people. And we did all sorts of analysis on the show. A lot of times where I did ridiculous things like comparing Hartford's power play to playing Mortal Kombat, comparing Calgary to a pressure cooker made of fine china. I channeled Shania Twain's song lyrics. I said Askarov must not have many friends in the locker room because one of them would have informed him how bad his mustache looks. I declared our podcast to basically be Festivus. I won a wager that allows me to continue to not recognize the Bridgeport rebrand. Hashtag Sound Tigers forever. And I used the phrase, yes, daddy, yoke me in serious analysis, plus a lot more. And it's not quite over. We do have one more thing before we head into off-season mode, and that's my favorite thing we do all season long by a very, very wide margin, and that is the Calder Farmstead Award Show. Yes, the only actual AHL awards show, and one featuring awards voted by people who actually watched the entire league this season on a regular basis. What a concept. This is currently in the works, and we're coordinating with our winners, who will be up and should be up. We should have this show up and ready for you guys in about a week-ish. I'm hoping a week is all we have to take to wrangle some more people. We have 9 awards to give out, and I'm very excited about it. This off-season, too, is one that I'm looking forward to, but also comes with a little bit of uncertainty. I think that next year we'll be able to run basically the same thing we did this year. Hopefully we bring some guests on. I'd like to think we made some friends along the way this season, but I also am, going to have the birth of my first child in August, for those of you that didn't know. And I hear that can be quite a time-consuming thing from other people who've done such things. So my availability for the show in the fall may not be as, ironclad as it was this season, where it's like, oh, we need to record at 4:00 in the morning for a morning release. Yeah, I can do that. Like, that may not work, and we may see, some chicanery from me during the next season. I don't know yet. I can't promise what it's going to look like, but I think everyone at this point who's listened to our show and followed us knows that we work incredibly hard, and this podcast holds a very high place in my, list of priorities, probably wrongly so. At the end of the day, I know that we are, two random people on the internet making dick jokes about minor league hockey. That all being said, as I always say, this is a labor of love for both myself and, as Sarah has learned this year, also for her as well. It takes a lot of work to make this show possible, because all of these games and our analysis of it isn't some like quick 10-minute thing we do before we jump on to record. It's truly a very laborious effort. And it's one that I can say with full confidence, no one does what we do. People report and break stories and, have features and interviews that we don't, but absolutely no one who covers this league has the level of analysis of the entire league like we do. Actually, honestly, there are only a handful of people in this league who do analysis that I think is respectable to our level. And I always will share their work and give them shout outs when possible. But nobody does what we do at this level. And that makes me incredibly proud of the work that we do, because I know that no matter what happens, ain't nobody can do what we can do. And that forever will always be what makes this a labor of love, because I enjoy making sure that is possible, and don't like when we have to turn in a show that is anything but the best we can do, and frequently refuse to do so, as Sarah has learned. But everyone, we have one more show left for the season, and then we're going to go into off-season mode. And by off-season mode, which I mean I am going to disappear for at least a calendar month, if not more, because as much as I have enjoyed this season and all the emotions that go with it, I am truly tired. And we'll look forward to not having to wait 5 minutes or more for an Excel file to open so that I can update a graph, because yes, that's how long it takes, sometimes longer. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Sarah, take us home.
That is it for us today. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcasts drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you listen on Spotify, and you already rated and reviewed on Spotify, the podcast is the same on Apple. You can go over to Apple and do the same thing there. That's allowed. I checked. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. All our social channels are not the same. There are memes that get posted on some of them and content that isn't in other places. So if you want to see everything from us, and I feel like you should, we have a lot of fun here, go follow them on all of those places. If you don't want to make a Twitter account because you don't want to join Twitter, that's a smart choice. I won't fault you for that one. Links to all of that and more, including our merch store, where if you saw the hoodie I was rocking in Game 4 at the Giant Center, you can buy that for sale. All of that is on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Even at this point in the season, I'm still not spelling the name out for you. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So he can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
My name is Sarah Avampato, and you can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or at Canes Country, where I talk about the soon to not be officially their affiliate anymore, the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. Both are personal accounts. My Twitter is by far the more active and probably the more interesting. My Instagram is mostly posts about my dog, who's adorable, but knows that she is adorable. She tried to befriend a turtle today, and I would not let her, and she was very upset about that. You can find all of my stats work, the money puck graph, the charts, the graphs, the this thing, the that predictor. All of that is on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. All lowercase, all one word. For the penultimate time this season, for Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.